French wars of religion were very bloody and complicated. They involved fire kings, thousands of deaths, and religious conversions up the wazoo. However, they led to a change in the governance of religion and helped France move into the modern era. Now let's begin. Henry II has established new measures against Protestant, known as Huguenots, in the Edict of Chateaubriand in 1551. He saw Huguenots as heretics and enemies of the state. However, during a tournament celebrating the marriage of his daughter, his visor was pierced by a lance during a joust, which left him mortally wounded. This left his son Francis II in charge, who was underage, so his mother Catherine de' Medici became Queen Regent. While her young sons Francis II and Charles IX were leaders of the throne, Catherine was given significant responsibility in the governing of France. She was a Catholic who wished to uphold the monarchy. She viewed the situation as political, not religious. Catherine used her relationship and influence over Charles IX to manipulate him into believing that Huguenots were going to launch a coup against the regime, and an attack against Protestant leaders was crucial. On August 24, 1572, the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre erupted.
Oh, baguette! Oh, je porte ma jupe sexy!
Henry III was much like Catherine in that he wanted a middle course that balanced politics and religion. Eventually, the Catholic League forced him to return to the quest for absolute religious unity in France. Henry III, sick of being pushed around, attempted to turn against the League, was exiled, and had no choice but to ally with the Protestant Henry IV. Catholics were enraged with Henry and stabbed him to death in 1589. When Henry IV first rose to power in 1589, he was the leader of the Protestants, specifically the Calvinists, against the Catholics. Shortly after the outbreak of St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre, Henry IV was confronted by Catholic troops. To prevent his imminent execution, he proclaimed he was a Catholic and abjured the Protestant faith. Later, he tried to retreat back to the Calvinists, who at first rejected his acceptance back into their religion. He got down on his hands and knees once again and proclaimed he was no longer a Catholic and was dedicated to the Calvinist faith, and they accepted him. The Edict of Nantes was proclaimed by Henry IV in 1598. This proclamation recognized and sanctioned minority religious rights. Henry IV granted the Huguenots freedom of public worship, the right of assembly, admission to public offices and universities, and permission to maintain fortified towns. Although this lowered tensions slightly, it did not end the war. Cardinal Richelieu essentially became the Secretary of State in France in 1616. Cardinal Richelieu sought to consolidate royal power and crush domestic factions. He hoped to restrain the power of the nobility in order to transform France into a centralized state. Richelieu was a member of the Politiques, a group of politics who put the success and well-being of the state above all else, including religious unification. Over the course of the 16th century, France made great progress towards the modern era. Although much blood was shed, this time period experienced a rise of secular power over religious faith. Through the Edict of Nantes, religious minorities were granted many rights, but they were by no means equal. This proclamation ushered in a period of greater religious toleration. However, Protestants were still looked down upon by the vast majority of Catholics.